everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So the movie that we're gonna take a look today, Jeremiah Johnson, is sort of based on a true story, sort of, because there was actually a man in the middle of the 19th century that was called Jeremiah Johnson. He also had a couple of nicknames: the Crow Killer, Liver Eating John, and such things. Those are also the titles of the two books that I guess is the main source of information that Sidney Pollack used when he made these movies. Now, it is a fact that they have, changed up a few things here and there, and I don't really mind these sort of things because for me it didn't hamper the movie at all. I think actually that this is quite a good movie. Let's find out what this movie is about, shall we? This is Jeremiah Johnson by Sidney Pollack. Redford plays Jeremiah Johnson. He is a war veteran from the American-Mexican War who, after the war, doesn't really want to live in modern society anymore. He wants to live up in the mountains and be a trapper and, live off the land and earn his, money through hunting the furry woodland creatures and stuff like that. So he goes up there with a kind of shitty rifle and dreams of, escaping modern society. He will not be entirely successful in this, we shall see. He also wants to escape his violent past. He's not going to be entirely successful with that either because of bad karma, bad luck, or simply, how mountains work up here. He will get into all sorts of trouble with all sorts of people. The local tribes, the US cavalry, various bandits and other trappers will make sure that his stay up here in the mountains won't be as peaceful as he thinks it's going to be. So this movie is kind of weirdly structured. It doesn't have the classical, three-act structure. It doesn't have a clear-cut villain or hero or, classical narrative. And I like that, even though it will come back to bite this movie in the ass a little bit later, but we'll get to that in a second. First, we're gonna have to talk about Sidney Pollack. Sidney Pollack, used his own money to be able to shoot this movie in Utah. And thank God he did that because it looks absolutely flawless. The cinematography in this one is spectacular. The scenery is so awesome and you just feel like you are there. You feel, the cold. You feel like you are up in, these mountains in Utah, and it makes the movie feel real. But the question is Sidney Pollack the best person to direct this movie? Because it was originally meant to be Sam Peckinpah alongside Clint Eastwood. I think Sam Peckinpah probably would have been an even better choice when it comes to directing this movie, but I think that it should have been, in that case, Sam Peckinpah with Robert Redford, because I don't think that a movie with Peckinpah and Eastwood would have worked as well, because this character isn't a Clint Eastwood character. This character is a straight up Robert Redford character, and it is maybe one of his greatest performances of all time. But Sam Peckinpah, on the other hand, would have been so much better of a choice, especially when it comes to the action sequences and descriptions of violence, because they are not very good shot and they're not very good edited. Sam Peckinpah would have made those sequences look absolutely awesome, and he wouldn't have toned down the violence. He would have amped up the violence, and blood and snow just makes for such a stark imagery. So that was a little bit sad, but I really like this movie because it is kind of unpredictable, because it doesn't have the classical, structure that a movie like this would have, because things happen and then you think, okay, so now A has happened, now they're going to do B and C, but they don't do B and C because they go around to F instead in a way that you didn't expect them to do. This was kind of fascinating because you couldn't figure out what's going to happen next. Now, some smartasses will probably say that, oh, I saw that one coming a mile away. I also think that they would say this after the movie was done, and they could say that with, the power of hindsight. As I said, fantastic performance by Robert Redford and a fantastically high level of authenticity. Now, this movie isn't exactly a Western. It's more of a survivalistic drama with hints of The Revenant, Seraphim Falls and Dances with Wolves. If you like, those sorts of movies, This is a movie that you will absolutely like, I think. The movie is surprisingly compact at only 106 minutes. Good lord, if they would have, done a remake around 2015-16, directed by Martin Scorsese or anything like that, it would have been a 246 minutes or something like that. Now we have a very tight story. Unfortunately, sometimes it gets a little lost, inside of its own complicated narrative. This movie is also severely backloaded, meaning that they have a lot of setup for a very brief and very short finale. And I was a little bit, what if they could have, used, the third act and made it a little bit of a bigger part of the movie? The movie in that case could have been absolutely fantastic. If you like these survivalistic semi-westerns, I think this is a movie just for you. But if you have any doubts at all, I think you should probably stay away from this one, because this is a very specific type of movie that a very specific type of people enjoy. But if you are one of those people, I think you will think this movie is absolutely great. A fantastic Robert Redford, a fantastic scope, great cinematography, compensates for an overly impractical narrative, and it should also be mentioned that the soundtrack is horrendously dated. I give Jeremiah Johnson 72 points. I really like this movie. Sometimes it gets a little lost in its own importance, but for the most part I think this movie is actually quite great. So I'll see you next time for, well, so and so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.